What's it like to have a father whose heart is only with his relatives back in his hometown? It is said that there are women who overly support their younger brothers and men who are men from humble backgrounds, who rely on their wives' families but still overly support their own rural relatives. Both are people that others avoid like the plague, fearing any connection with them. Unfortunately, my father is the legendary. My father was born into a rural family in a remote area. He has 11 siblings. As the 10th child in the family, although not the youngest child, he is the youngest son and naturally received a lot of love from his grandparents. My father worked hard and was admitted to college. He became the only college student in the village. After graduating, he stayed in the city to work and married a city girl. It can be said that he brought honor to his ancestors and the whole family benefited. However, as far as I can remember, my father's whole mind has always been on his relatives back in his hometown. Either someone in his family needs help today or another family needs to borrow money tomorrow. His meager salary combined with my mother's salary was all used to subsidize his relatives back home. He didn't even have money to buy me a toy. In the end, my mother couldn't take it anymore, seeing that our own life was almost impossible to continue. And if this continued, there would be no way to live. Only then did my father restrain himself a little. But he still secretly helped his relatives a lot. My mother knew that it was not easy for him to come out of the countryside. She understood that he wanted to help his relatives back home. She turned a blind eye and let it go. But who knew that as my father's relatives were helped more and more, they became more and more excessive and started making demands without limits. My youngest aunt, my father's younger sister, brought her son, my cousin Leo, to our house. She actually asked me to lend my house to her son. The reason was that her son had a girlfriend and they were talking about marriage. The girl demanded that they must buy a house in the city. Otherwise she wouldn't marry. Not only that, she also wanted me to transfer the house directly to her son's name. The reason was that the girl would look at the property ownership certificate at that time. The act must be convincing enough. Otherwise it would be exposed. Naturally, I refused. There is no such thing as borrowing a house for marriage. Moreover, asking me to transfer the ownership? How can I do that? If I lend it to him, will it be returned? From so many years of experience, I know that this is a losing deal. The house will never come back. Moreover, this house contains most of my mother's efforts throughout her life. When we bought this house, my mother was afraid that this would happen one day, so she directly wrote my name on it. So I said, "Aunt, it's not that I don't want to lend it. It's just that I'm not young anymore. This house is for me to use when I get married that my mother saved for me. You don't have a girlfriend now. Why do you need this house?" "Aunt, I don't have one now. But it doesn't mean I won't have one in the future. Besides, I will get married sooner or later. Without a house then, how can it work? Right?" When she heard my refusal, Leo, who had been standing by and not saying a word, got angry. He said sarcastically, "Mom, can't you see? He just looks down on us. He looks down on us for being from the countryside and is not willing to help with such a small favor. Still relatives? This is bullshit relatives." Hearing him say that, I was also unhappy. Not lending him the house means looking down on him. What kind of logic is this? Moreover, our family has helped their family a lot in the past. Isn't my father good enough to him? He didn't do well in his studies. After graduating from a technical secondary school, he entered society, without education or background. In the end, my father pulled strings and introduced him to work as a contractor on a construction site. Originally, such a good job is not something that ordinary people can get. As a result, this guy doesn't know how to work hard. He only knows how to live a luxurious life. Not only is he not attentive to the project, but he also does shoddy work. After the matter was exposed, he lost a lot of money. After that, my father came forward to clean up his mess. When I was a child, all the money in the family was used by my father to subsidize his relatives back home. He didn't even buy me a toy. Seeing others having toys to play with, I was extremely envious. Once there was a composition competition at school. The prize for second place was a mechanical cat. So I worked hard on writing the composition just to get second place and get that mechanical cat. Heaven rewards the diligent. Through my efforts, I won first place in the school. Even so, I gave up the prize for first place and exchanged it for the mechanical cat for second place. Finally, I also had a toy. I wanted to go home quickly and share it with my parents. But when I got home, I found that my aunt and cousin Leo had come. My cousin took a fancy to my mechanical cat at a glance and clamored for it. Naturally, I wouldn't give it to him. But who knew that my father didn't consider my feelings at all, and directly gave my mechanical cat to him. That day, I cried for a long time. Even so, in his eyes, we are still not good to him. Not only is he not grateful at all, but today he even puts a label of looking down on them on me. Sometimes I feel that he is my father's son, and I am the one who was picked up. He took my mechanical cat back then. And now he wants to take my house. No way. My good temper is gone. Cousin, if you think so, then think so. Anyway, with a little conscience, one wouldn't say such words. To tell you the truth, I won't lend this house. Good. 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 Now that you have grown up, you dare not listen to your elders. I don't believe that no one can control you. Son, let's go. When my cousin closed the door, he deliberately disgusted me and pulled the door hard. The sound of closing the door resounded through the corridor. Obviously, my aunt is threatening me. This matter will not end like this. Since I can't be persuaded here, she will definitely go to my father. According to my father's principle that the affairs of his hometown people are the top priority. Sure enough, after a while, he called me. As soon as he opened his mouth, he questioned, "What are you doing? Your aunt asked you to transfer the house to your cousin. Why didn't you agree? Dad, are you okay? This is my house. Why should I transfer it to him?" Oh, my father sighed on the other end of the phone and said, "Son, you know how harsh the environment is back in our hometown. Your aunt's family is in difficulty and can't afford a house at all. Isn't our family in better condition than theirs? If we can help, we should help." I am already tired of hearing these words from my father. Whenever anyone in his hometown asks him for help, he always says this. He has been saying this for so many years, and he is not tired of it. But I am tired of it. Dad, I know your feelings for your hometown and that you have experienced hard times and want to help your relatives back home. But you need to have a bottom line. Not everything can be helped. We just need to do our best. There was silence on the other end of the phone for a while. Son, Dad is begging you. Okay? I didn't expect that my father would be so humble and beg his own son for this matter. I felt a mixture of emotions in my heart, and also found him unreasonable. This is a matter of principle. I will definitely not agree to this matter. Dad, I'm sorry. I can't agree. I'm hanging up. After hanging up the phone, I felt a little uncomfortable. I called my mother and told her about this matter. When my mother found out about this, she was furious. She told me not to agree. She would support me. She also said that if my father forced me, she would divorce my father. Anyway, she had had enough of this kind of life for so many years. She scolded my father's relatives back home for a while, saying that they were greedy and insatiable. They wanted to empty our family. They gave everything and wanted everything. Now they even had their eyes on her son's house. With my mother's support, I felt more confident. For nothing else. Just for myself and my mother. I would definitely not give this house. For several days in a row, I didn't hear my father mention this matter again. Originally, I thought this matter was over. Who knew that this was just the beginning of a nightmare? My aunt actually went back to her hometown and told the relatives back home about this matter. She brought a group of relatives and directly came to my unit. That day, as usual, I went to work at my unit. After a while, I heard someone calling my name. Where is Ryan? Let this ungrateful person come out. Ryan, come out. When I came out, good heavens, there were more than a dozen people. Old and young. Even the security guards were blocked instead. As soon as they saw me come out, they began to condemn. The leader was my eldest uncle's son. Maybe because my eldest uncle is too old to come. So he sent his son. My cousin is not young anymore. He is almost 50. Because of long hours of labor. His skin is dark and he looks much older than his actual age. Although he is old, I still have to call him brother. Brother, why are you here? If we don't come, can it work? Is it so difficult for you to do us a favor now? Yes. We are poor relatives. You, this young master from the city, look down on us. Brother, what are you talking about? Come on, let's go out and talk. The commotion was quite big. It was also at the workplace. Although it wasn't my fault, there were so many colleagues watching. Moreover, family scandals should not be made public. We can't affect the work of other colleagues either. I pulled my brother and thought about taking these people out first. Who knew that these people were determined to make me uncomfortable? They shook me off. Let go of me. Where are we going? What are you afraid of? Let's talk right here. That's right. Come on. Everyone listen. This Ryan has become prosperous and has a good job. He looks down on us. His poor relatives. He doesn't even help his relatives. He is just an ungrateful person. With someone backing them up. My aunt took the lead in slandering me. The more they talked, the more outrageous it became. Many colleagues began to point at me. After a while, the leader came. Ryan, what's going on? Sorry, leader. There is something going on at home. Don't worry. I will deal with it soon. As soon as they heard it was my leader, they became even more energetic. Leader, you have to make the decision for us. You fire Ryan quickly. Such a person doesn't deserve such a good job. Fire this ungrateful person. Hearing these words, I was almost so angry that I could faint. Are these really the simple and kind relatives back home that my father talked about? They are simply devils. No, they should be 100 times more terrifying than devils. In the end, the company called the police to get these people away. The leader called me to his office and asked me what was going on. I told him the whole story. Fortunately, the leader is a reasonable person. He didn't fire me. Instead, he told me to go home and rest for a few days to deal with family affairs. After being so angry, I went home. When I got home, I was furious. When my mother found out about this, she almost had a fight with my father. She said directly that if my father didn't solve this matter well, she would divorce him and let him live alone. Perhaps my father also knew that he was in the wrong. He didn't object at all. He just said that he would handle this matter well. After a few days, my father told me that it was okay. He had solved this matter and told me to go to work. Although I was very curious about what method he used to make his unreasonable relatives stop making trouble, I didn't ask. As long as the matter was solved, it would be good. Finally, I could go to work at ease. Just like this. After more than a month, one day, on a whim, I wanted to go and see my new house. Who knew that when I pressed my fingerprint, I couldn't open the door no matter what? I thought the fingerprint was broken. As a result, after repeated inspections, I found that it was not broken at all. Just when I didn't know what to do, the door opened from inside. The one who opened the door was none other than Cousin Leo. Why are you in my house? What, your house? This is my house. Leo, what are you talking nonsense? This is my house. How did you get in? After hearing the commotion inside, 2 more people came out. One was my aunt, and the other was a young girl who looked about the same age as Leo. She should be his girlfriend. The girl frowned and asked, Leo, what's going on? Who is he? Oh. Xiaozu. Let's go in first. We'll explain to you later. When my aunt saw that it was me, she nervously pulled the girl in. Seeing them go in, Leo said impatiently, I said this is my house. Bullshit. Leo. This is my house. If you don't move out soon, I'll call the police and report you for trespassing. Who knew that Leo didn't care at all? You go and report. I'd like to see who the law will help at that time. Saying that, he took out the property ownership certificate from inside the house and handed it to me. The owner's name was clearly written with 2 big characters Leo. Boom, in an instant. I almost couldn't catch my breath. How could it be? The house is clearly mine. How did it become his? It must be fake. Don't think you can do whatever you want just by taking a fake property ownership certificate. Do you know that this is illegal? I can sue you. Go and sue. Hurry up and sue. I beg you. Sue me. Leo was full of pride and didn't look afraid at all. This made me doubt. I began to suspect that the property ownership certificate in his hand was real. To tell you the truth, Uncle has given this house to me. Now this house is mine. Please leave my home. What? I couldn't believe my ears. My father actually gave my house to Leo. Suddenly, I remembered that half a month ago, when my mother was cleaning up the certificates at home and asked if I had seen the property ownership certificate. At that time, I didn't pay much attention. I thought my mother had put it somewhere and forgotten. After all, she often forgets where she put things. Now thinking about my father's expression at that time, it was a bit strange. Could it be that my father stole the property ownership certificate and transferred it to Leo? This is what he said, that he had handled the matter well. It was to secretly give our family's house directly to others behind my back and my mother's back. Even a saint is not as kind as him. Just wanting to confirm if this was true, I hurried home and just wanted to question my father if this was true. As soon as I got home, I saw my father coming out of the kitchen with dishes. Seeing me come back, my father said with a smile on his face, "Son is back. Wash your hands and eat. Your dad is happy today." I cooked several dishes by myself. What's there to eat? Ryan, how can you talk to your dad like that? Your dad cooked several dishes you like by himself today. My mother, who didn't know what had happened yet, was very dissatisfied with my attitude towards talking to my dad. However, I am in an extremely bad mood now. With a dark face, I shouted at my mother, "Do you know why he is so happy? Son, what's wrong? What happened? Don't worry. Tell Mom." Only then did my mother realize that something was wrong with me. He gave our family's house to Leo. They have already moved in. What did you say? After hearing this, my mother almost fainted. I supported her. She questioned my father. "Lao Yang, is what son said true?" My father probably didn't expect that the matter would be discovered so soon. At this time, he couldn't see his good mood just now. Instead, he had a worried and helpless expression. "Wife. Rian, listen to my explanation." "Explain what?" "Explain that you don't even care about your own family for others? Explain that your own son is not as good as someone else's son? Explain that in your heart, there are only your relatives. There is no me and Mom at all." When my father heard me say this, he became anxious. "It's not like that. Listen to my explanation. I have you in my heart. But my younger sister's family is in great difficulty. Her husband died early. It's not easy for my younger sister to bring up Yang Yang alone. As an elder brother, I have to help them." Huh. It's the same again. Every time he talks about the difficulties of his relatives back home, he never considers our feelings. "Arthur, I want to divorce you." "Divorce." After hearing this, my mother covered her chest and shouted the sentence and then fainted. Mom, what's wrong with you? Don't scare me." Seeing my mother faint, my father wanted to come and help. I pushed him away. "Go away. Don't touch my mom." My mom was pissed off by you. If something happens to her, I won't let you go. After being pushed by me, my father stood there in a daze with guilt on his face, not knowing what to do. I called 110 and sent my mother to the hospital. Fortunately, the rescue was timely, and there was no life-threatening danger. I also directly asked for leave to go home and take care of her. When I went out to get water, I found my father squatting outside the ward. When he saw me come out, he quickly stood up. He looked haggard. He should be worried about my mother. Ryan, can I go in and see your mom? No. My mom can't stand any stimulation. Please leave. Hearing my refusal, a look of loneliness flashed in my father's eyes. He took a look inside, and then left. Seeing my father like this, I felt a little sad in my heart. But this kind of man who only cares about others and doesn't care about his family really makes people disgusted from the bottom of their hearts. For several days, I didn't see my father again. Until one day, my Aunt Flora called. In the call, she questioned me why I didn't let my father see my mother. He was completely decadent. She also said that if something happened to my father, I would be the culprit. She said that I was an unfilial son and should be struck by lightning. I didn't spoil her either. Anyway, things had already come to this point. It didn't matter whether we were relatives or not. I directly said that my mother was harmed because of them. My father's current situation was caused by them. They were the culprits and should be punished. I said bluntly that this matter was not over. Maybe my attitude scared Aunt Flora. She hung up the phone directly in fright. A few days later, after the doctor confirmed that my mother was fine, she was discharged from the hospital. After being discharged, in order not to stimulate my mother, we didn't go home. Instead, we sent my mother to my uncle's house. When my uncle knew about this matter, he was so angry that he said he would go and find my father and ask him what he was thinking. How could he give his own son's house to others? Moreover, my father's actions over the years had long made my uncle's family dissatisfied. In the past, they didn't say anything because of my mother's face. This time, not only did he give the family's house to others, but also made my mother sick. This directly touched my uncle's bottom line. He threatened that he must get the house back and then let my father and my mother divorce. I stopped my uncle who was about to go and find my father. I told him that I could handle this matter myself. After repeatedly promising him that I could get the house back and handle this matter well, my uncle finally agreed to let me deal with it. If my uncle personally went out, I couldn't imagine what would happen to my father. After all, my uncle is a martial arts champion. I sorted out the whole story again. If Leo's property ownership certificate is not fake and not used to deceive his marriage partner, then the original owner is clearly me. I didn't show up in person. How could it be transferred? There is obviously something fishy here. Sure enough, when I went to the real estate transaction center to check, I found that someone had impersonated me to transfer the ownership at that time. Suddenly, the whole thing became clear. My father knew that I wouldn't agree to transfer the ownership, so he directly found someone to go instead of me. What a good father. For a relative, he took such a big risk. He could do things to this extent. He is really a good elder brother of my little aunt and a good uncle of Leo. Unfortunately, he is not a good father of mine nor a good husband of my mother. I went home and confronted my father directly. When he heard that I had been to the real estate transaction center and found out that he had asked someone to impersonate me, he couldn't stay calm. Son, let me tell you, you can't be stupid. Let this matter go. I will buy you a new house in the future. Don't make this matter big. My father's words couldn't help but make me sneer. You buy? What can you buy with? My father's money over the years has all been secretly used by him to subsidize his relatives. He didn't even have a penny left in his pocket. I will find a way. Don't worry. Dad will definitely buy it for you. Forget it. You are just for your nephew and for your job. Don't do this. My father works in an institution. Once this matter is made big, he will definitely lose his proud job. And he will also break the law unknowingly. The crime will be even worse. But this is my own father after all. I can't be so heartless now. Give you 3 days. Let Aunt's family move out immediately and transfer the house back. Son, do we really have to do this? Your aunt. Don't say any more. Don't say those words about being not easy anymore. Who is easy? They are all not easy. Is only my mom easy? Have you contributed a penny to the family over the years? It's all my mom's. That house is my mom's efforts for most of her life. Why should you give it away just because you say so? Have you considered my mom's feelings and my feelings? Don't you think you owe my mom too much? My father was speechless by what I said. After a long time, he agreed. Originally, I thought this matter was solved. But who knew that when I went to the new house 3 days later, Aunt's family not only didn't move out but also said righteously that this was my house. Why should they move? At first, I was patient and spoke nicely and asked them to move out. Who knew that this made them even worse? My aunt rushed forward and threw herself on me. Then she fell and hit the door frame. Blood flowed from her forehead. Immediately, she shouted that I had hit her. Many neighbors who didn't know the truth were attracted. Some called the police and some recorded videos. Then the police came and took us all back to the police station. In the police station, my aunt seemed to have found a backer. She falsely accused me of hitting her and said that I pushed her and she hit the door frame. Because the situation at the scene, and the testimonies of the people around all pointed to me pushing her, I couldn't defend myself. The situation was very unfavorable to me. The police began to persuade me to apologize and reconcile. Otherwise, there would be a criminal record, which would be very unfavorable to my future development. But I clearly know that I didn't push her at all. I didn't do it. It was all Aunt Flora's false accusation. But now there is no way to prove that I didn't push her. Even the police don't believe me. When my father heard the news and came quickly, he said he wanted to reconcile. I directly refused. If we really reconciled, wouldn't this prove that I hit someone? Why should I admit something I didn't do? Seeing my firm attitude, my father turned to speak nicely to Aunt's family. But Aunt's family didn't appreciate it at all. At this moment, they had no more family affection for Lao Yang. There was only hatred for Lao Yang for wanting to take back the house. It completely confirmed that saying. A small favor can breed gratitude. But a large favor can breed enmity. My father had no choice. In the end, he agreed not to take back the house. Although my father was doing this for my own good this time, if I had to pay the price of a house for this kind of thing, then I would rather have a criminal record. No. I don't agree. The house must be returned. Son, be obedient. Give the house to your aunt's family. Anyway, they are all relatives. It's not giving it to outsiders. If Lao Yang's actions just now made me a little touched, then this sentence completely made me numb. I originally thought that he would wake up because of Aunt's family's attitude towards him. It seems that I was thinking too much. Suddenly, I remembered that a year ago, because I was worried that the house would be unoccupied for a long time and afraid that someone might break in and cause damage. So I installed a pinhole camera on the door. The position was extremely hidden. If you are not a professional, it is generally not easy to find. I just don't know if it's still useful after not taking care of it for so long. That's also a hope. Treating a dead horse as if it were alive. I immediately said that I had evidence to prove my innocence. When they heard that I had evidence, Aunt's family changed their expressions, and were no longer as aggressive as before. I took out my phone and found the software that connected to the camera at the beginning. After opening it, I was pleasantly surprised to find that the picture was still synchronizing. I quickly adjusted the timeline and showed the video to the police. After careful inspection by the police, it was confirmed that I had never touched Aunt Flora from the beginning to the end. It was all her slander. When the matter was exposed, Aunt couldn't stay calm. She began to cry and say how difficult it was for her. She apologized to me and begged me to forgive her. She said that she was possessed by a devil to do such a thing. It wasn't on purpose. Of course. I wouldn't believe her words at all. I'm not stupid. Anyone with eyes can see if it was intentional. I immediately said that I didn't agree to reconcile and wanted to sue her for slander. My father's saintly heart flared up again. Seeing my aunt crying pitifully and me being so unforgiving, he got angry immediately. Ryan, don't be too excessive. Even if your aunt is wrong, she is still your elder. How can you sue her and let her go to jail? My father's behavior completely disappointed me. At this time, he was still helping Aunt's family. He didn't even think about how their family treated me. There's no need to say any more. This matter will never be settled privately. Seeing my firm attitude, and the police who understood the whole process also stopped persuading. They directly handled it officially. In the end, Aunt Flora was detained for 3 days and fined 1,000 yuan. Although the punishment was not heavy, I was really relieved. Because of this matter, my father didn't give me a good look on the way back. He was full of resentment everywhere, blaming me for making his sister go to jail. I didn't care. After all, I was used to it after so many years. Who knew that my father said again that he would give the house to Aunt's family as compensation this time? I was completely speechless. I couldn't understand how there could be such a charitable person in this world. Of course, I definitely wouldn't agree to this. The house must be taken back. The next day, I went to the real estate transactions center and submitted evidence to prove that the person who transferred the ownership at that time was not me. It directly proved that this transaction was invalid. I took back the property ownership certificate. After getting the property ownership certificate, I went to Leo's place and asked him to move out. At first, Leo didn't agree. When I took out the property ownership certificate and said that I could sue him for fraud, he agreed to move out. Of course, this was just to scare him. I wouldn't really sue him because my father was also involved in this matter and couldn't get away. When my mother learned that I got the house back, she was extremely happy. However, after this incident, my mother was completely disappointed in Lao Yang and was determined to divorce. After helping her sort out the divorce agreement, my father was almost left with nothing. The house we live in now was given to my mother by my grandparents. When my father married my mother, he was a complete pauper and had no money to buy a house. My grandparents loved my mother, so they bought the house. Not to mention the family savings. They were all saved by my mother little by little over the years. My father didn't bring back a penny. When I took the divorce agreement and found my father. When my father saw the divorce agreement, he burst into tears. At that moment, I felt that my father had aged a lot. My mother divorced my father. My father, who was left with nothing, had no face to continue living here and moved to his unit. Originally, I thought life would calm down like this. But who knew that because Leo lost the house and his girlfriend broke up with him, in a fit of anger, he retaliated against me and broke into the new house and smashed all the furniture. I only knew when a neighbor heard the commotion and called me. Tens of thousands of yuan worth of furniture was destroyed like this. Of course, I couldn't let it go. I directly called the police. With both witnesses and evidence, the police quickly caught Leo, who was afraid and on the run. When my father learned about this, he asked me to settle privately. I directly refused him. Since it didn't work here, my father looked for other ways, hoping to reduce his nephew's sentence by a few years. Unfortunately, my father was so wholeheartedly kind to others, but others wouldn't remember his kindness at all. When Leo learned that he would have to go to jail for several years no matter what, he refused. He thought it was because my father didn't find connections for him. He directly reported my father for abusing his power and using his position to act wrongly. The matter of impersonating and transferring the property ownership soon came to light. My father was removed from his position, and directly fell from a successful person to the bottom. The matter was not over yet. After the judgment was pronounced, Leo was sentenced to 10 years in prison. My father was sentenced to 3 years for breaking the law unknowingly. Lao Yang never dreamed that he would be betrayed by his nephew, whom he treated like his own son. When Aunt Flora heard that her son would be in jail for 10 years, she fainted directly. Since she had no place to live in the city, she could only go back to live in the countryside. Finally, I heard that when she went back to her hometown, she boasted about how well she lived in the city. After a long time, relatives back home also began to dislike having contact with her. During my father's imprisonment, I went to see him. Life in prison was not good. Moreover, my father had a high social status over the years and was used to living in comfort. Suddenly experiencing such a change, not only his body but also his psychology was traumatized. He seemed to have aged several years. Inside, when my father saw me coming to see him, tears flowed down. He told me that he regretted it. He regretted only thinking about relatives all these years and not considering the feelings of me and my mother. He said that he was not a good husband or a good father and asked me to forgive him. At this moment, I felt that my father going to jail was not a bad thing. At least it made him wake up.